They fired at her point blank, the round tearing through her abdomen and leaving her bleeding on the floor of a collapsed grain silo, while laughter crackled over their radios, snapping proof-of-death photos before moving to the next kill. But the thing about shooting a special operations officer in the gut is, you'd better be sure she doesn't get back up. Because Captain Rena Holt, call sign Iron Vein, wasn't finished yet. Before we show you how she turned her own execution into their nightmare. Make sure you're subscribed to Old Bill's Tales with the bell on, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Because this story doesn't end zipped in a body bag. It ends proving that some hearts and some veins just refuse to stop, even when they should. Captain Rena Holt didn't like the way the air tasted. Too quiet. Too clean. The convoy route twisted through the forgotten ridges of Donetska Ridge, a place that had changed hands more times than anyone cared to count, clinging to chalk cliffs and dirt roads held together by luck and rusted rails. Officially, it was a Joint Task Unit Orion patrol, another routine security sweep. Unofficially, Rena had walked through minefields that felt safer. She leaned against the matte green MRAP, eyes cutting across the ridgeline. Her unit was solid. 8 SEALs, 3 Allied operators, and a handful of local contractors whose mismatched gear and spotless rifles didn't inspire confidence. Chief Darrow appeared beside her, square-jawed, quiet. He nodded toward the lead vehicle, where one contractor knelt over a drone case. "Still not buying these guys?" he asked. Rena's lips barely moved. "Their kits are too new." One of them called a magazine a clip. Darrow almost smiled. "You always this suspicious?" "When 9 people get ambushed on a friendly route," she said. "Suspicion's just survival instinct." The dry weeds whispered against rusted fencing. No wind, no birds, no locals. She tapped the digital map strapped to her wrist. "This stretch is supposed to be IED country. Intel says last week's convoy hit 2 bombs here." "Maybe someone cleared it," Darrow offered. "Yeah, but who?" One contractor approached, tall, clean-cut East Coast accent, sleeves rolled high to show a lion tattoo with Cyrillic script. Something about him set her on edge. "Ma'am, drones are airborne. Full satellite uplink," he said. "Name?" she asked. "Sergeant Kellen Reed." "You've run this route before?" "Twice. Smooth both times." "Funny," she said. "Intel doesn't agree." Reed shrugged. "Then maybe Intel's wrong." She let the silence stretch until Chief Darrow broke it. "Ma'am, we moving?" Rena gave the terrain one last scan. Ridges, old silos, turns in the road that looked staged. "Yeah. Mount up." The team moved with rehearsed precision. Engines roared, dust swirling from the tires like it wanted to hide something. Rena climbed into the lead MRAP, settling behind the gunner's shield, fingers drumming on the dash, not from nerves, but calibration. Darrow leaned in. "You thinking it's a trap?" "I'm thinking no one needs to fake a war out here. There's enough real ones buried under this dirt. If it goes loud, we don't wait for permission." The convoy rolled forward, vehicles stretched thin, too open, too easy to hit. Behind them, Reed's drone buzzed overhead. Ahead, the silence held its breath, and somewhere deep in Rena Holt's chest, instincts tapped out Morse code in her pulse. Not fear, just the rhythm of someone who'd survived enough to sense the break before it comes. The first 20 minutes crawled by in a silence so heavy it made her jaw ache. Engines hummed, radios hissed, the convoy crept onward. Rena sat with her rifle resting across her lap, eyes never still. "Convoy 1, status green." Darrow called, tapping the receiver twice. His tell. The lead MR app ahead vanished in a fireball of metal and flame, armor plates spinning up like deadly confetti as the blast slammed into her vehicle hard enough to jar her spine into the seat. The windshield shattered into a spiderweb. IED, contact front! Darrow roared over the net. Gunfire answered from the ridge in clean, practiced bursts. Not random spray, but disciplined volleys that sealed off every escape as if the ambush had been rehearsed. Ambush! Left ridge! Chief Darrow shouted, hauling the gunner into position as the 50 roared, muzzle flashes flicking off the rocks, while spent casings rained like metallic hail. Through the fractured glass, Rena Holt saw the contractors, 3 of them sliding back from the fight. One simply dropped his rifle, another barked into a handset she didn't recognize. "Darrow, those contractors are pulling back!" she yelled. "Copy," he snapped, swinging fire toward the ridge as grenades pounded and machine guns chewed the earth, dirt spitting up around the tires like the road itself was trying to throw them off. Rena kicked the door open and dropped behind the MRAP's wheel well, lungs burning from dust and cordite. A few yards up, Corporal Lane lay bleeding, a dark bloom widening across his thigh. "Stay with me," she called, hauling him in with a strength her frame had no right to hold, pressing gauze until blood soaked through her gloves. Then a single, clean crack cut the chaos, sharp and deliberate. The hit felt like a hammer to her gut as the round smashed her armor and drove deep. The world tilted. For a blink she saw only fractured sky through black smoke. Darrow's voice exploded on the comms, ragged and urgent. "Commander down! Commander down!" The SEALs locked their lines, dragging the wounded to cover, but enemy fire tightened, colder and closer. Rena tried to draw breath and felt white-hot pain burn her belly. Blood flooded her mouth as her fingers clawed at her vest, finding the cracked ceramic plate and the searing breach where her abdomen should be whole. Vision narrowing, sound dimming. The last thing she heard before darkness crept in was Darrow steady and the distant laughter on the ridge. They were sure she was gone. Dull explosions pulsed like far-off drums while her heart hammered louder than the heavy gun. Rena Holt lay flat, armor split, gut crushed with pain that made her lungs feel like glass. She wheezed, blood bubbling at her lips, hands trembling though her mind stayed sharp. The body can break before the will does. Her father's drown-proofing drills came back calm and clear. Don't listen to the body. She blinked through the blur. The vest had absorbed the worst, but it split the plate and shattered ribs. A lung was punctured. Yet she was still breathing, and that meant she wasn't finished. She forced her arm to move. Agony ripped through her side, but her hand obeyed, clawing at dirt for an anchor. She turned her head and caught a glimpse of the fight through haze. Her unit falling back, Darrow dragging a wounded man into cover, muzzle flashes along the ridges, enemy silhouettes slipping between rocks. Then she heard a voice, closer now and calmer than the rest. The confirmer. "She's hit in the gut." "Nobody survives that," someone said. Boots scraped gravel. A shadow leaned over her. Rena slowed her breathing, chest rising just enough to stir dust, blood streaking down her chin. She let her head fall limp and played dead, because movement here meant death. Through half-closed eyes, she watched one of them kneel beside her, masked, rifle slung low, a radio crackling on his shoulder. "Primary target neutralized," he said flat. Another voice answered over the net. "Copy. Collector gear, we'll stage the bodies after," came the plan. A hand tugged at her vest straps and rolled her slightly. Pain detonated through broken ribs as her instinct screamed to fight, to claw his throat, to end him. But cold, drilled discipline overruled. Not yet. Overruled. Not yet. The boots moved away. 2 pairs, then 3. Scraping gravel as they slung another body aside, their voices fading with each step. She swallowed blood and grit, forcing everything down to one single point. Her pulse. Not the noise around her. Not the pain. Not the warmth soaking her fatigues. Just that steady drum beneath her ribs. Slower. Heavier. Still there. "You're not dead until you choose to stop," her father's drill echoed, and her right hand found dirt, palm pressed hard. She braced and inched herself an inch into the shallow shadow beneath the MRAP's wheel well, that tiny scrap of cover becoming a refuge. Every tiny move cost more agony than most people feel in a lifetime, and then voices crept back, sharper. The enemy was closing, stepping over gravel with the patient care of hunters. She was bleeding out fast. "Trail runs east. Follow it. Sweep the kill zone. Confirm all." Her vision blurred. Black crept at the edges. She clenched her teeth until her jaw ached, refusing to let the dark take her. If they reached her, they'd learn this vein wasn't finished. Rena Holt stilled her breath. Blood pooled under her vest as she narrowed her eyes in that thin strip of shade. She wasn't going to run. Not yet. If they hauled her body away, they'd find out just how very alive she still was. They dragged her like luggage, one man on each arm. Their boots scraped the track. The vest snagged on rocks and dirt as they hauled her toward the charred shell of an abandoned grain silo overlooking the road. A building that looked like mortar had taken it years ago. Walls half standing, roof long gone, soot clinging to cracked stone. "She's lighter than I thought," one muttered, his accented English coarse. "How the hell did this one lead a team?" another jeered. "Special forces types are overrated," came the mocking tone. "They break like everyone else, especially the women." Rena kept her body loose and breathed shallow, counting steps, memorizing turns, feeling weight shift in their grips. Her head lolled so she could watch the dark smear she left in the dust, a deliberate trail, deceptive as her pulse. They dumped her into what used to be a living room. Broken floorboards, charred rafters, a dusty beam sagging low enough it might cave if anyone breathed too hard. "Let her bleed out," one said. "We'll stage the photos when she's gone." A camera clicked, cheap plastic. She opened one eye just enough to catch the lens aimed at her chest. The split vest, the blood-stained collar, the trident badge half buried under torn webbing. "They'll believe she died on the spot," the first voice declared. "Abdominal wound. Everyone accepts that." "No one survives a shot like that through the gut," someone added. "But she didn't look dead," a new voice from the doorway said, footsteps heavy. "Let me check." "Read." She knew that voice, too smooth, too confident. "You already got the pictures," the first answered. "What more do you need? Intel said she might have seen something before the ambush." Those words landed like lead. Rena's heart slammed, not with fear, but with cold confirmation. They hadn't come just to kill. They'd come to erase what she'd seen, erase what she knew. The convoy hadn't been a random ambush. This was deliberate. Arms trafficking, betrayal from inside. That drone feed earlier? It hadn't only mapped terrain. It had been syncing with something. Off-grid comms, private channels. Someone didn't want her reporting it. "Was she carrying anything?" Reed asked. "Radio, sidearm, bloodied to hell?" We dumped it. Any recovered footage? No body cam. She ditched it. Reed clicked his tongue, disappointed. We needed her to vanish quietly. Now we have to stage the scene. Locals can do it. Blame the militia. Same playbook. She was the only one carrying the Donetska files. If she went down, the mission would vanish with her. Rena kept her face slack while the truth settled in. They already knew what she'd been sent to uncover. They assumed she was knocked out cold, that the blood meant she was finished, that a hole in her gut closed the book. They were wrong, and the man who leaned over her too close would learn that the hard way. Sergeant Kellen Reed crouched beside her. She felt the bitter tang of his coffee and nicotine breath as he tapped her vest. Bulletproof isn't the same as heartproof, he said, half respectful, half dismissive. She looked up at him. Finish it. Burn it, he ordered, and his footsteps faded. Rena cracked an eye and started to move. The splintered floor bit into her back as light slanted through broken rafters and gold-tinged dust settled in the ruin. She lay where they dropped her, blood drying at her throat. The vest buckled just enough to reveal the cracked trauma plate beneath. Her belly felt like someone had set a coal inside it. They told her not to move. Each breath hissed. It was breath, and that mattered. She went inward, not to think, but to find the center, to separate pain from purpose. Slow, shallow breaths, each one an anchor. Memories surfaced. Week 5 surf, frozen sand, drown-proofing with Instructor Keith and his prosthetic leg, making them run 10 miles barefoot to prove mindset beat muscle. His mantra returned. Your body will scream it's dying, but your job is to move anyway. So she moved, just a little. Fingers curled over splintered wood, testing, then slid beneath her to fish for anything sharp. A broken beam, a nail, metal under her palm. A rifle lay there, safety off, probably left by one of the idiots who thought she was done. She checked the chamber, empty, but the mag pouch stayed latched to the sling. God bless laziness. She rolled like a corpse, easing out of rigor, one elbow then the other, hauling her torso up while ribs screamed and the world spun. She bit her lip hard enough to draw blood just to stay awake. Footsteps sounded outside. Casual, confident. 2 men, one humming, one on a radio. Told you, dead as hell. Nobody survives that hit, one said. Wrap her, dump the body, burn the place. 0 evidence. A man stepped through the blown doorway with a rifle slung across his chest, not even looking at the pack on the floor. The same one they'd ripped from her earlier. He turned his back. Big mistake. Rena surged up fast, half staggering, half driven by pure will. Pain threatened to black her out, but her hand was already on the mag. She slammed it home, racked the slide, and put a clean round into the base of the first man's skull before he finished turning. The second barely had a finger on his trigger when her second shot punched into his clavicle. Her third round nicked the head, and he folded like a sandbag. Silence fell, broken by the sharp rasp of her breath and the steady drip of blood from her vest onto the floorboards. 3 minutes stretched. She stayed perfectly still until a voice crackled from the enemy radio clipped to the fallen man's chest. Confirm execution! Where's the photo? Someone demanded. Rena snatched the radio and hit send, her voice flat and cold. This is Holt. You hit me in the gut. Next time, aim higher. Static filled the line, then a stunned silence. No jokes, no laughter, just panic seeping through like gas in a closed room. She stripped the first man's kit, snapping open the utility belt and taking only what she needed. fresh mags, a sidearm, a knife, a flashbang, and a few painkillers. She ground 2 pills between her molars. Not enough to fix what was broken, merely enough to keep her upright. Rena glanced at her vest. Split clean, ceramic ruined and soaked, but the trident badge over her sternum still glinted. The plate was cracked, but the symbol held. Her ribs might be shattered, a lung punctured, but her will did not fracture. The fight stayed with her. If anyone wanted to break a heart, they'd picked the wrong one. The silo wasn't much, but for now it was hers. She moved like a machine that had taken too many hits and refused to stop. Every step deliberate, every breath measured, pain a constant pressure beneath her ribs, and a throb under her collarbone she wore like new armor. From the dead, she stripped 2 rifles, 3 loaded mags, a half-empty medkit, and a comms radio still keyed to the enemy net. Crouched by a crumbling wall, she flipped it open. Static fizzed. Then a clipped voice cut through. "Confirm kill." "No photos received, you're running out of time," another answered, nervous, unfamiliar. "Team 3, dark. No visual on target body." She might have. "Negative, she's dead, shot through the gut. Finish cleanup, burn everything." Rena smiled with blood-slicked teeth. They still thought she was a ghost with a timer above her head, and that belief would be their undoing. She keyed the mic, voice low and even. "This is Holt. Told you already. Next time, aim higher." 5 seconds of dead air, then frantic noise. "She's alive? How is she alive? Sweep the silo, move now." Rena tossed the radio aside, less than 2 minutes to act. She started with the door, wedging a broken beam at shoulder height and lashing it with paracord to a grenade pin, so anyone forcing it would take the blast to the chest. Next, the stairs. A tripwire at the base hooked to a flashbang nested in a rusty tin can. Non-lethal, but blinding enough to buy seconds. Upstairs, if you could call it that, a collapsed loft offered a crawl space just big enough for a firing nest. She propped a busted chair leg to hold a shutter open for sight. Her rifle rested on that improvised perch, muzzle steady, sightlines locked on the narrow road below. Everything else, empty bottles, shattered glass, a charred blanket, became camouflage to hide movement and mask reloads. She waited not like prey, but like a spider, patient and still. The first man slipped through the window, silent, knife in hand, radio quiet. She put a round through his temple before his boots hit the floor. Then the door detonated. Her trap worked. The grenade tore half the entrance apart and threw a second man into the wall hard enough to splinter wood. He didn't rise. The enemy radio erupted in panic. "Team 4, status!" She keyed from her prone position upstairs, voice low and steady. "Down 2, request immediate reinforcements." "I'm still here," came the taunt over the net. "You're bluffing." "Come find out." She moved again, fast despite the fire behind her ribs, sliding to the corner where moonlight leaked through roof gaps and cast thin ribbons across the floor. Outside, they shouted and argued, someone losing control. Exactly what she wanted. Anger makes people sloppy. A voice cut the night through a portable loudspeaker. "Captain Holt, last chance. You've nowhere to go." She said nothing. Instead, she lobbed a flare into the courtyard. It bloomed a blinding red. She dropped a second, and as a man tried to flank right, she shot the third clean through his throat. A fourth screamed and ran. She let him go. Fear would spread faster than bullets. Inside, every breath ripped her gut like a knife, but her mind stayed sharp. She was no longer just surviving. She was shaping the battlefield, flipping the kill box they'd dragged her into so the farmhouse became the trap, and she held the trigger. Then a shot cracked the night. Sharp, close, impossibly precise. A round slammed into a beam inches above her head and showered her with splinters. She hit the floor, breath snatched, and knew this wasn't the same crew she'd been bleeding against all night. This was someone patient, someone else. She thumbed the enemy radio beside her and swapped frequencies. A new voice drifted in, calm, smooth, without panic. The last shot had been a warning. She didn't bite. The voice said, "You're clever, I'll give you that. Farmhouse tricks, the staged death, the quiet show." She'd seen this play before. She kept silent until he added, "I don't rush, I don't shout, and I don't miss twice." And she heard the marksman's ego wrapped in a thin coat of respect. She raised the mic slow and low. "I'm not like the ones you killed. Let's see what happens when neither of us misses." A terse chuckle answered, then a name. Marko Velichko, ex-Special Forces, now freelance for wealthy clients. "You?" the man asked. "Captain Raina Holt, United States Navy SEAL," she answered. And when he said, "Ah, Iron Vein," she realized they'd already been trading nicknames. She eased out of his sightline and crawled to the side window. She didn't need to spot him yet, only to make him think she was trying. "You know I've got you boxed in," Marco said, and she angled a shard of broken glass through the frame gap like a mirror to scan. Movement on the northern ridge, maybe 200 meters out. A half-crouched silhouette between pines, long barrel, suppressed, good position, low wind, arrogance the mistake. He talked too much, so she moved, out through a hole in the side wall, low across broken soil, using collapsed stone fence to mask her outline, rifle on her back for balance rather than firepower. At 200 meters, she couldn't outgun him, but she could outwalk him. She circled wide through a dry creek bed, each step deliberate, breath burning, chest aching, moving like a ghost until she reached the ridge base. Paused, listened as he shifted, then climbed fast and low, weaving between boulders, 50, 30, 10. She heard him exhale, slow and centered, drawing for another shot, then rose from the slope like smoke with her rifle aimed dead center as his head turned, eyes widening, and she fired once. Center mass. The round hit hard enough to drop his scope. He staggered against the tree, armor taking some of it. He grabbed for a sidearm, but her second round tore into his upper thigh and he screamed as he fell. She closed the last yards as he crawled for his rifle, kicked it away. He looked up, pain smeared across his face, disbelief in his eyes. "How?" he rasped. Captain Rena Holt stood above him, chest heaving, rifle steady. "I moved," she said simply. He tried a grin through blood. "You're not supposed to be alive." She tilted her head. "That's the problem with shooting someone in the gut. You assume you hit the center." Then she pulled the trigger again. One clean, professional shot, like everything she'd done tonight. She slung the sniper rifle across her shoulder and stepped back into the trees, no words left. The man who thought a single bullet would finish her had just learned what the world was about to find out. The iron vein doesn't stop until the mission's over. Dawn broke across the ridge as a blacked-out helicopter swept low, blades slicing mist like razors. It took 2 encrypted bursts to reach them, one from the stolen enemy radio, another from the sealed beacon in her belt reserved for no-fail extractions. She watched it descend over the last rise, rotors throwing up dust and pine needles, shaking the trees like they recognized who was returning. Raina didn't wave or signal. She simply stood in the clearing, vest torn open, sniper rifle slung across her back like a trophy. The first man out was Chief Darrow. He slowed, blinked, stepped toward her as if walking into a dream. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. "I'm fine," she said. Though ribs fractured, shoulder bruised black, skin over her sternum swollen from burns and impact trauma. But she was standing, and that was everything. Behind Darrow, Joint Task Unit Orion poured out, weapons up, sweeping perimeters. Medics moved in fast and silent. "What happened?" Darrow asked. Rena handed him the comms unit she'd taken from the farmhouse, the sniper radio, and a blood-slick tablet full of terrain scans, routes, and payout logs, encrypted but damning. "Contractors were paid to stage the ambush," she said. "Someone with reach wanted me gone." Darrow didn't speak for a long moment. When he did, his voice was tight. "They shot you point blank. Plate hit." She looked down. The ceramic had shattered like a spider web, the trident badge smeared in blood, but still there. "It missed the heart," she said. A medic stepped forward to guide her to the evac bird, but froze when he saw her up close. Not just the blood, but the way she stood, eyes steady. "Sir," he whispered to Joom. "Chief Darrow." Thinking she couldn't hear. "That wound, how's she still standing?" Darrow didn't answer. He just looked at her, not with pity or fear, but with something closer to awe. Behind them, the surviving SEALs from the convoy appeared, some limping, some pale and bandaged, but alive. When they saw her, they stopped cold. Even those who'd seen her drop from that sniper's round. Even the ones who'd heard the radio call. "Commander down." They stared like they were seeing something that shouldn't be possible. One of the Allied operators murmured in his own tongue, and another translated softly, almost reverently, "Heart of steel." "No," Darrow corrected. Voice low, eyes fixed on her. "Heart of iron." Captain Rena Holt didn't answer. She just kept walking toward the helicopter, boots dragging through the dirt, her body fueled by spite, breath, and the last drops of adrenaline. The nickname caught fire before she even climbed aboard. Iron Vein. Whispers spread through the ranks, low mutters on radio channels. No one said it to her directly. They didn't have to. She heard it, and for the first time in hours, something inside her eased. Not the pain, but the question that had burned in her chest since the first shot tore the sky apart. Did it matter that I kept going? Now she knew it did. She sat on the chopper's floor as it lifted off, blood soaking through the gauze across her stomach, eyes fixed on the open door while the farmhouse vanished beneath the storm of dust. She didn't speak, didn't nod, didn't blink. Mission complete. Heart still beating. Could you keep fighting with a bullet lodged inches from your heart like she did? Would you have the focus to trap a house, outthink a sniper, and walk away with proof while bleeding the whole time? Tell us in the comments. I read everyone. And if this story reminded you that survival isn't just strength, but refusing to quit when you should be finished, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a mission. Share this video with someone who needs to remember. The heart only stops when you let it. And since Old Bill's Tales uploads every day, your next story's already waiting. Watch one of the videos on your screen now, and I'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place, with a brand new mission.